Hello, everybody, if you're watching this recording, and those who are live online. My name's Scott Alexander. I'm from the MII Council, and I'm chairing today's proceedings. We've just watched a video by Eve Pearlman about dialogue journalism, about bringing people together who I suppose would be politically very much opposed, and seeing how we could bring them, or she could bring them together through a process. So if we could bring in our first speaker, who is Michael Lang. Most of you will know Michael. He's a mediator with more than 40 years of experience in the areas of family, workplace, organisational, congregational and public body disputes. He's the founding director of the Master of Arts programme in Conflict Resolution at Antioch University, amongst other works. He is the author of the Guide to Reflective Practice in Conflict Resolution. Michael, the first question we ask everyone on the panel is, tell us something that you found interesting. You're on mute. Oh, I'm going to let you through here.
There we are.
There we go. Okay, you can speak now, Michael.
Thanks. Thank you, Scott. Um, One of the things that I noticed, because I think we will all pick up on how the extraordinary work that was done by uh, Perlman and her colleagues at Spaceship Media. But the one thing that occurred to me is that in our work, very little of it is of the type that she's talking about, where people just have conversations. Our work involves people who have a particular dispute of some nature, whether it's family, workplace, community, and there is a desire to find an outcome. And so this work that distinguishes us significantly from the kind of work that she's doing. I say that not to separate us in this way, that I think even though our work involves outcome, it's outcome driven to a significant degree, there's so much that we can learn. And I think in particular, for example, about the idea of how we conduct our individual conversations with parties before we may bring them together, and whether we could use the same kind of approach that she and her colleagues used, and that is to say to someone, what do you think the other person thinks of you? What do you think the other person is going to say about you? And I think that the advantage of being able to do things like that is to help people achieve a level of self-awareness, and the extent to which they are able to become self-aware at some level or another, there is the capacity then to listen to what the other person has to say without simultaneously figuring out how you're going to respond and tell them they're wrong, which is, of course, a critical problem. So let me stop there because we've got other colleagues who have ideas and thoughts as well. I mean,
I'm sure. I'm sure. It was interesting as well. Although I'll come to maybe Janie, if you're able to unmute yourself, that would be great. If not, if Alison could do it, that was an experiment, if you like, between the Trump and Clinton. So it wasn't even the last election. It was before the previous election. Things may have gotten worse. But is there anything in particular that you picked up that you think would be of interest, I suppose, to the people watching this video?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Michael said, I found that to be a very interesting opportunity for potentially for us mediators. One thing that I thought was particularly interesting was that when Eve Pearlman talked about what the principles of journalism, core principles were, she said careful vetting of information, diligent research, curiosity, and commitment to serving the public good. She did mention that, and back then, as it is now, journalism doesn't always seem maybe to be in practice, actively trying to realize those principles. But when I think about how we as mediators are driven sort of ethically and professionally, curiosity and sort of commitment to serving that public good, or that our clients or the relationships still is very much a part of what we do. And one thing that was interesting to me was thinking about how to apply the diligent, I wrote it down, careful vetting of information and diligent research. And I'm reminded of cases I did a while ago at the Chicago Daily Center, in eviction court, and there were shorter models, so 30 minutes, 40 minutes at the max. And when people were disputing things like what was understood in the lease or what was due, if they had that bit of information, I would often ask, so does anybody have that lease with them? Would it be helpful to look at that? At least that took away some of the vitriol, and accusations of unfairness or something, not all, but some of it. So utilizing those two practices that journalists use, I think we use in mediation, and they can be helpful as well. So that was one of my impressions. I don't know if I answered your question, but
We'll get round to all the questions that will be answered. I'm sure there'll be a few from the audience. If you do have any, put them in the chat. Obviously, I forgot to introduce you. Sorry, Jenny. Jenny Busek is principal of the Collaborative Communication Group, an executive coaching, consulting, and mediation firm based in the Chicago area. For over 20 years, Jane has enjoyed engaging clients as a facilitator, coach, consultant, and mediator at every level across multiple industries, including federal, state, local government, medicine, law, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, marketing. Jane has mediated hundreds of cases ranging from gang crime to eviction, as she just mentioned, and to human rights charges. I'll come to our third speaker, Ilona Kuplik. She left her home country of Germany with her family in 2011 to live in the southwest of France in 2016. They lived in Ireland for a year, where she discovered her love for our island and its people. Since 2019, she has been on the panel of mediators of Family Mediation NI, FMNI, Belfast, and an MII registered international elder mediator. She's also CEDAR accredited and member of the Association of European Mediators in Paris. Ilona, what did you pick up? Is there a theme, either one that's been picked up previously by Jenny or by Michael, or something that you picked up that you thought that this is really useful for mediators?
Yeah, I wanted to say something different, but I will catch up on what was said previously. So, in our kind of pre-mediation or information and assessment meetings with the parents individually at FMNI, we have a question we ask, and which is, would you have said something, not have said something, or something differently if the other parent would have been here with us?
Okay.
And I think this goes a little bit into the first question. They engage with each other, saying, okay, what do you think about Californian people? What do you think about Alabamian people when you're coming from each other states? And I always found, like sometimes parents are like, and so what do I have to say here? And I say, okay, if you don't say anything, then you would have said nothing differently or not said. And it's really interesting what it makes, because it makes them thinking, and they'll go away from the meeting as well, still thinking about things. And I think it's very good to ask them. The other question we ask is, what would be a good outcome for you? What would be a good outcome for your children? And what would be a good outcome for the other parent? Because there is this curiosity, awareness, and this thing of this, to explode curiosity. That's true. I should think also about what the other parent would like to. And often they think it's apparent what they think. They want to have the children more, or don't want to have they don't want to pay money for something. But it is actually going deeper. So it prepares them to go into the first joint session, having thought about the other parent, maybe since a long time, for the first time again. So, yeah. very interesting. So that's definitely something I take away from the video again.
Okay, and our final panelist is Andrea O'Neill, who hopefully can become unmuted, is the president of the MII, our leader indeed, and a founder of ACON Resolutions. She's an accredited MII mediator, obviously, and holds a master's in mediation and conflict intervention. She has had specialist training in separating couples and child inclusive mediation, and a certified synergy conflict management coach. She's also the MII lead for collaboration with the Irish Red Cross. With all that on your mind, Andre, give us something that you picked up from this.
Yeah, and I suppose you actually did it in part of the introduction, and I'm thinking of Cindy Noble. So for any of those that don't know Cindy Noble, she designed conflict management process. And so a lot of mediators would have trained under Cindy or under one of her trainers. And it's something that I've incorporated into my mediation practice as well as a standalone. And what resonated with me, one of the things that resonated with me in this piece was there's talk about compassion, restraint, self-awareness. And one of the things that we do if we're, either doing conflict coaching or a pre-mediation meeting, and we're working with clients, we might actually, kind of explore what was possibly going on for the other person. Was there any values or needs or identities for them that might have been undermined? So in some way, although we haven't got that person in the room and there isn't an open dialogue, we're really shifting the mind a little bit into, well, what would that dialogue potentially be? And that goes back to her first question about what they thought the other side thought of them. And so I think that is something that we probably do incorporate into our practice. It mightn't be, as a standalone part of the process, but might be part of the pre-mediation, or it might be, providing coaching service for somebody who is going into mediation. And I think that's part of what we do as mediators. What struck me about this is 2016. And for us here in Ireland, we know for a long time in our history, trying to create that space for dialogue was really, really difficult. And it took, a lot of people who were mediators and those who acted as mediators to create that space for dialogue. And I know I spotted Margaret Constantine somewhere there on the thing, and I know that's something she was involved in as well. And we look at Glencree, and Glencree is set up here in Ireland just to host that space for dialogue. So I think dialogue is really, really important, and it is part of our mediation process. It's incorporated in some way that we're creating a space for dialogue, either for the two parties to be able to hear and really understand each other. I suppose the difference with mediation, which Michael kind of addressed, is that we're looking for, to help them or for them to help themselves to come to a resolution or an agreement. But sometimes in dialogue, there never is an agreement or a resolution. The best we can hope for is an understanding. And if Scott, if I have 1 minute, I just think there's a powerful quote by David Bohm. He's an American philosopher. And he says, the basic idea of dialogue is to be able to talk while suspending your opinions, holding them in front of you, while neither suppressing them nor insisting upon them, not trying to convince, but simply to understand. The first thing is that we must perceive all the meanings of everybody together without having to make any decision or saying who's right and who's wrong. It is more important that we all see the same thing, that will create a new frame of mind in which there is a common consciousness. It is a kind of implicit order where each one enfolds the whole consciousness. With a common consciousness, we then have something new, a new kind of intelligence. I think that really aligns with mediation and what we do in mediation. And I think the work that was done here in 2016 to bring Trump and to bring Clinton supporters together in a room was really, really brave. So I really resonated with this TED Talk, and I think it's very timely, and something I suppose I feel quite passionate about. So thank you for that topics
It's
yet.
no problem at all, Andrea. I'll come into to Michael there. If it were easy to do um, and get everyone to listen to understand, then we'd do it. But one of the things that struck me about this, right, when they asked the question, what do you think the other people think of you? There wasn't one positive thing came out. Right. If you think about what goes on in California with the stuff that they've created and like we're speaking together across oceans on the internet and okay, might be an English angle there too, but a lot of the tech stuff comes from California. None of that was mentioned that they think we're brilliant at tech. It was all all your liberals, your anti-democratic, and on the other side were rednecks with cotton fields behind it. Nobody seemed to think the other side had anything positive to say about them. I find it quite sad if that's our default position, which is to be protective, and I get that, but the protection is they probably hate us.
Mhm.
Anyway, any comments on that or anything else you've heard, Michael?
Well, I don't know whether they selectively edited out any of the positive comments, but for a specific purpose, not to deceive us.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think about clients whom I've asked a similar question. And think about your own clients. Would any of them say something positive about their spouse, their coworker, their neighbor, their landlord or tenant? No. If you ask them, they would list 5 or 6 or 20 things about characteristics about that person that they found offensive, deplorable, disgusting. They don't. And so it I think it is a construct of our being in conflict that that's what we focus on. The challenge for us as mediators, if we ask the kind of question that they did, um, is to, and I have done this any number of times, is to say, is there any one thing that you can say that's positive about the other person? One. Um, Only to open the door, only to create an opening so that other positive things can eventually flow, but they won't initially. My experience says people will always talk about what's difficult or troublesome about the other individual. And I think just let me say one more thing. I think we have difficulty inviting our clients to say to deepen the conflict. Our We have this impulse toward harmony, which is understandable, and at the same time, it can get in our way and get in the way of our clients, who, in order to find a place of understanding or harmony or just simple agreement, they often need first to become we tend to think of it as, well, here's what we do. We take people who are apart and we move them closer and closer and closer together. But in fact, there's theory that suggests that what we need to do first is help them become increasingly divergent, sharpen the difference, clarify the difference, not make them angrier, but make them clear, help them become clearer about what it is that they are truly in conflict about. Because once they understand that, they have the ability then to search for possible solutions that would make sense to them. I'm going to stop here. I could talk a lot more about this because I think it's critical to us as practitioners to find ways to be in the presence of that level of discord that is, I think, necessary in order to be able to find agreement and understanding.
Mm.
Okay, we'll maybe bring in Jenny on that one. There, keeping that because that reminds me of the old coaching technique. And what else? And what else? And what else? Because the thing that's really bothering somebody is probably buried down a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
and if you help them solve the first problem, you haven't solved the problem because the one that's really concerning them, they don't want to tell you about when they first meet you. You've got to go
Yeah.
deeper. So is there something in there about the dialogue and this point that Michael's talking about, which is stretching it, clarifying the process to allow them to find a more, I suppose, a more valuable solution for them?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Michael, that I'll piggyback on that. I sometimes I'm trying to get more involved in the civic space here in the States, and there's an emphasis on finding common ground. And that's great, but to your point, Michael, you first have to find out where you differ and what's important to you. Um, I feel sometimes as if there are folks that think, well, let's just figure out where we agree. That could be the easy part. It's not necessarily the easy part, but where do we differ? And I think I think like it's sort of like the dichotomy between the individual and the community, right? I can say, here's what's important to me, here's why this bothers me, here's what's important to you, why this bothers you. That's all fine and good. When we talk about common, I'm sorry I'm not being articulate about this. I'm sort of thinking as I speak, but when we try to find common ground, I think it's that we have to figure out how do we, with our different preferences and values, land on something in which we can all be in community with one another. What do we agree on? But before we can get there, we do need to say, look, here's what I find really important, or here's what I find that you do that doesn't align with what I want. And then you have to do sort of an analysis of what's most important and what are the basic things that upon which we can agree, but we can't get there first. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense to somebody out there, I'm sure.
I'm hoping.
Our name is Alona, so Alona, I'll bring you in next.
Yeah, it does make
Is
sense.
there some kind of theme coming out here about discord before you get harmony? I don't know.
I absolutely agree that it's important to point out where the differences are. And I think every mediator is guilty of the moment when we see, oh yes, there's common ground, and we jump on the occasion, and then and I was at some stage in my career, I was reminded that that's only one option actually, and that's always what I'm thinking. If there's common ground and we have found this, and there's this moment of relief, aha, we found something where we can agree on. I instantly asked first reality checking. How does it work? How could you do this? How do you want to organize this and stuff like this? That's the first thing. And then I say, okay, and what else? What other option is there? Because I forgot in one mediation to ask for another option, and everybody went out, and then there was an email storm coming into the office and saying, "Oh, this is not working. Should have done this," and so. So it's very, yeah, I think we are all, as I said, guilty of this, that we are happy and relieved when we have some common ground. But reality checking is for me vital in a mediation session, and very, very early on, because often people, after they find the way together in mediation into a joint session, they are just happy that it's working at some stage. And the mediator, it's like decompression actually, and the mediator obviously also gets well gets into this wave of, yeah, we are all relieved and happy and so on, but then really my red flag is going up and say, okay, how does it work in reality? How do you want to do this? And right away, this is only for me, it's only one option. And I sometimes challenge them and say, this is one option, what should be the other one, or what could be the other one? And this is, for me, as I said, this is vital, this is crucial, and I'm always reminding myself of this. It's very important. Another thing is, just going back to the video, she said it takes practice and effort, and I'm absolutely agreeing with that, and that's actually connected to this as well. Like working as a mediator is effort, and sometimes I feel really drained after a mediation session, really like tired and sitting on the train and sleeping. And I think and can only imagine this is the same or even more and more difficult for the participants. And therefore, we need respect, and we need to remind them to be respectful to each other, and to do baby steps sometimes if this is needed. No? So not to jump on locations or on options and to say, ah, yeah, let's do that like this. No, to remind them this is a process, and that's called the mediation process. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll bring in Andrea here. Anything on this theme or anything else you want to take us and weave us away somewhere else, Andrea?
Yeah, I suppose really, I mean, just to pick up from Iona, is that piece around, the importance of framework when we're in our mediation or when we're facilitating a dialogue, and how that nearly provides us with a scaffolding or a safeguarding as we're going through a process. And also the piece around, the kind of addressing the diversities that are in the room, and not just looking for the agreement, but also going back to why those differences are so important to people, because they hold on to them with pure passion sometimes, and to understand really what has happened to them, or what has been the life experience, or what has been the lived experience with the other person that makes them feel so passionately about their thoughts or their opinions or their views. And sometimes when we understand that, or understand the impact of something that has happened, it can create a space for a bit of a release, so that they can move on to that stage where we explore things that we agree upon and everything else. I think it's Mary Parker Follett, and if anybody else knows, they can correct me. She talks about integrated diversity, and about kind of that we are different, we all have to be different. That's why that's the way the world is. We're each individuals, we each have different perspectives, we're brought up with different beliefs and value systems. And really to have that democracy that Janie talked about earlier on, to keep democracy and everything else, sorry, I think that was off camera, is the need for that integrated diversity, so that diversity in opinions and values and needs to some extent is accepted and really nearly celebrated. And so how do we figure out how to do that all together? And I'm not just talking about on the larger scale globally or politically, but also as I've worked with a family recently, and we're sitting around the table, and these are the same discussions, and it's about their value systems. It's about, what they've brought from different family backgrounds, and how do they merge all these different value systems into this new this new family system that they find themselves into. So I think that piece around, integrating diversity and difference, and I think we do that as mediators in relation to developing an understanding of each other in the process. And in some way, then diversity can be accepted and integrated, rather than being seen as something that has to be solved or fixed.
Okay. Diversity and integration. Michael, that was the 2016-17 election that you're looking at. Things seem to have gotten worse, it seems to me, in the world, not better since that one. I don't know if it's because people can forge their own communities and find their own people, or stick within their own groupthink and their own little beliefs online. Those had it not been for the journalists bringing the Californians and the Alabamans together, they would never have met, right? They just wouldn't. And
Right.
if the stereotypes are anywhere close, then they would, like most of us, bring friends in that meet their values, their outlooks and beliefs. Is there a way that, as mediators, using the technology to help bring this together? Is there something about society, or I don't know where I'm going with this question, but you know what I mean? Hopefully you know what I mean. It seems worse. It seems that we're more polarized. And our job as mediators is maybe to show how polarized we are, and to bring them together. But I don't see a lot of hope at the minute. Maybe I'm wrong. Help me be hopeful.
I have a little a piece that one of my sons, who's an artist, made that just has the word hope. I wish I could just grab it and show it to you, Scott. Um, One of the things that Eve Pearlman said is that the state of discord is bad for everyone.
Mm.
And I I think if there is a way of helping people have the conversation, it begins with that. Because I think as people are, and I can only speak about what's happening in this country, and I speak from a relatively narrow perspective. I'm not just one person, but the life I've lived, the color of my skin, my age, the career that I've had, it all shapes my perspective. So let's just acknowledge that. That's a reality. Um, and that is that the discord that exists, that there is an undercurrent of fear. And the politicians might like to exploit that fear to create further division.
Mhm.
I think that the way to create any kind of understanding, and I'm not talking about cohesion, just simple understanding, is to acknowledge the fear that exists first, the fear of the other, the fear of what continued discourse is likely to mean, the uncertainty that that presents to us. And and that applies with our clients as well, in the more intimate setting of our mediation work, that people in conflict are terrified at some level about the uncertainty that exists as a consequence of the conflict itself. They don't know what's going to happen. Is there going to be an understanding? What's it going to look like? How's it going to affect me? What will my life be like if this conflict isn't resolved? There's a lot of fear, and recognizing that creates the opportunity then for us to begin to help people acknowledge the uncertainty and their anxiety about that uncertainty, and help use the process to gain a modicum of clarity that that may not erase the uncertainty, but makes it more possible for people to live with the ambiguity, or to narrow the scope of the ambiguity to make it possible as human beings to move ahead and not be so rigidly stymied and controlled by our own reaction to the conflict situation. And
Mhm.
I'll just say one last thing, that just because I wanted to pick up on what Ilona and Jane and Andrea have said, because the four of us have each said something similar about the value of dialogue, the importance of civility. And what is so rich and wonderful is that there are four unique voices. And it'd be easy to say, oh, well, these four people just agree. Well, we do largely. And it's not that we disagree, but to explore why we agree in the way that we do. What is it that's similar, but also to find out the differences. And the only way to do that is to honor the unique voices that each of the people has. So I just wanted to say that it looks like there's harmony here and there's not disharmony among us. What there are differences that are rich and wonderful. And if we had hours, we'd be able to explore those.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'll bring in one of those voices. I usually go to the next. Jenny, Michael chatted about clarity, and Eve Pearlman in her video, her TED Talk, was talking about being completely transparent. It's one of the things, or two of the points, if you like, the mediators would try and bring out, and be completely transparent about the process, about the fact there may be no successful outcome, but there should be a better understanding, all that kind of thing. Is there anything else that would carry on from where Michael's coming on about helping people see the joins, if you like, as well as the splits?
Yeah, I am. As you were taught that your plea earlier about say something that gives me hope. There's a there's a silver artist and poet in Castlecomer, County Kildare, maybe Carlow, not sure, um, has a poetry book, and I have this in front of me at all times. I also am a songwriter, lyricist, and also do my work like here. But this, I don't know if it's backwards, but it's
No,
darkness shades, so light can be. And when I think about the work that we do, all of us here, we're trying to create that light and not to do it artificially, not to say, oh, we're all like kumbaya, we're going to go away, braiding each other's hair, it'll be great. But finding that, and I'm integrative diversity, I have to look into that, Andrea. But in all of our differences and all of our preferences, that we can figure out a way to live in community. And um, we, as mediators, can help people do that. I think we have a lot of influence and good power, if there's such a thing, to be able to do that. So I suppose that's where I think the hope comes from, Scott, is from maybe from partially from ourselves and the work that we do.
okay, we never give up hope. We've got to be resilient in all those things. So I see that D. Sammy has written, this discussion gives me hope. There you go. If it gives you hope, it gives me hope too. That there are like-minded individuals out there in the world and provides a model I can adapt in my country and possibly region. There you go. That's a bit of hope. So thank you very much. If there are any other comments you want to, or questions you want to put to the panel, give us a shout on the chat or pop your hand up there. Ilona, coming to you, following on, I suppose, from the hope, the we've looked at differences, we've looked at stretching out where those differences are and helping people identifying them before we kind of help bring them together. We've been transparent, we've looked at clarity and so on, and polarization and lots of things coming in there. Is there anything else you want to pick up on? We were looking at one of the issues that came up when we were having the chat beforehand was vigilant to offence. We're ready. We're ready to pounce and we're ready to defend. And maybe, if I'm picking it up right here, some of the discussion is about helping people see that's normal, right? I don't know. That's what people are. That's what we're all like that. We're all ready to respond, as opposed to what Andrew was chatting about, listen to understand. But being transparent about this is what we hope you will do. Is that something that we need to do as mediators? This transparency, this process is not here to give you the answers, it's to empower you in some way or to help you figure out how you can find out your own answers.
Mm. Yeah, I have two things in this. Hopefully, I will remember the second one after you said the first. So the first was the transparency. I think, I was referring to the process, and when I get into difficulties in the mediation because the people are just not, very nice to each other, not really trying to find common ground option, reality checking, whatever they have to do or we have to do with them, I always remind myself of the process. Push it back to the people coming to you as a mediator. So I'm not there to solve their problem. They are coming with their problem and they know exactly how to solve it. It's just a matter of if they recognize this or if they remember, if they are willing to do it, and if they have it's not about the power to have it because they have it, but to really like the willingness to do it. That's the one thing. And therefore, transparency is really important because I have to be transparent to myself. I know what the process is. I really trust into process. And sometimes I'm also saying that to the parents or to the people I'm working with. There's a process here we are following, and it really helps them. The other thing is, Michael, you said you repeated the words of hope, fear, differences, uncertainty. I think we are living in a time, and she's also referring to it, Eve. We're living in a time. It seems not to be rocket science what we are doing, even as mediators. As she says, it's not rocket science to be a good journalist, because I think mediation is around for such a long time already. We haven't invented it, and we are not the first, and definitely not the last doing it. to bring people together in a respectful, safe environment and trying to evolve or to get them to have dialogue again or to start to communicate to each other again. Hope, fear, uncertainty, all these are in first of all words. And even fear, the word fear is nothing, it's not only negative. Fear is also excitement, maybe energy bringing, energizing or something like, and like uncertainty. For example, in companies, they have to live with, as everybody, we have to live with uncertainty. And I absolutely understand. And I'm at the moment not reading really a lot of the news because I know that's not good for me, for my mindset at the moment. At some stage, I will start again, probably tomorrow. But today, I didn't have the power to force, the hope to read it because it's so negative. But uncertainty is nothing negative, and in the word in this, because uncertainty is something we have to live with because we can't control everything. We just can't. And she refers to that as well when she says that it's difficult, it's challenging. She says it's we only can. There's something else which I forgot. What she says. She said it takes practice, and whatever she said, it also refers always to the thing that we have to play the thing as it comes. And when we try to give them the structure and the safe space, then at least we give them this opportunity where people come in and start talking to each other again. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, and that's what you said, Michael, like agreement and disagreement, like it's okay to disagree as well. And sometimes I say that to my people as well. I say, well, if you can't agree on this now, let's park that. And sometimes I say it's also okay not to agree. Because I
Okay.
can't solve it. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's up to them. They don't have to agree, and we can't force anything. Andy, bringing you back in. We've got the annual conference coming up on the 3rd and
Yeah.
4th of October. We're looking at a number of issues there, including very sensitive ones around resolution around child abuse and so on. What I'm picking up from Ilona and others is that as mediators, whatever the situation is, we've got to go in there and pass our confidence on to others, to tell them it's okay to disagree, to tell them it's okay to agree, to tell them it's okay to figure out their own way. And if it doesn't work, you're better informed. Okay,
Yeah.
is that something that you see as vital in mediation?
I
And
think
what if you get it
I
wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes we do get it wrong, don't we? Because we're human beings as well. And I think it's that transparency of actually going, actually, I'm going to change direction here, and to be aware. And for anybody that's trained with Michael Langer or worked with Michael in around reflective practice, that's where our greatest learning comes from, is when we do get it wrong, because sometimes
Mhm.
we do. And that's okay. But what's important is that we're able to understand why we took a certain direction. And the piece around the reflective practice piece is that we take action, that we don't just keep reflecting on it, that we actually brings us to a place of understanding why we did what we did. And sometimes that's based on something that we did that was good, and not necessarily something that we failed on. But I think a couple of things that have come up as I've listened to the last piece of this conversation is, a piece around, I suppose, again, inherited narratives. So we each have a story that we bring to the table, and some of those are inherited stories, and we have to figure those out and work those out. And in that inherited narrative might be intergenerational trauma. So it gets all so complex. So I think as a mediator, it's been able to normalize what seems, maybe not normal, or maybe there's shame that's carried with this conflict in some way. So normalizing that, and saying, nobody is the best version of themselves in conflict. Nobody brings the best person forward when they're in conflict. And so actually normalizing that. And the other piece was around the hope, the fear, the difference, and the uncertainty. And we actually have a very practical tool that we can use in mediation in relation to those things. And that is, and I know you're a fan as well, Scott, is David Rock's SCARF model. So we can, using the David Rock scarf model, and integrating it into our practice in some way, where we might have to talk to somebody's status, give them a sense of certainty, a sense of autonomy, which is what we do in our process anyway, relatedness, so help build that bridge so that they can connect with each other, see the human in each other, and a sense of fairness. And when we provide some, or I mean, sometimes it's all of them, sometimes it's one or two of those elements in the mediation, we help people engage in a conversation. We help them engage in a process. And that's a very practical tool that we have as mediators that we can integrate into our practice. I know you're a fan as well, Scott, and so but that just came to mind as we were going through that. So I think the important thing is normalizing it for it to be part of our practice, but also recognizing when it's something bigger than what normally happens. Because sometimes somebody will come into the room. You were talking about the conversations that would be going on at conference, and we're talking about creating. Catherine O'Connell will be presenting on how do you create or facilitate a mediation that's that dealt with the legacy of child sexual abuse. And one of the pieces there is that is big. That is sometimes that is outside the normal. So how do you manage that process, and what has to be done differently, and how do you navigate that? What things do you have to take into consideration? And so it is going to be a fascinating conversation. I hope we will have many people join us on that day, because that's one of our conversations. We also have Graham and Kelly joining us to discuss the Edinburgh Declaration, and we're going to be talking about polarisation and the importance of that declaration now at this time. We also have Brian Penny on Saturday. He's our keynote speaker, and he will be addressing, I suppose, his own story of addiction and how he overcame that, and his role. He's just, sorry, I should give him his full title, Dr. Brian Penny. And the neuroscience that we can bring into the room as mediators to help us deal with people that find themselves in difficult situations.
Right. Well, I'm not going to let you go through the whole agenda as a
That's
plug
great,
for the thing, because we do have a question from Tony Carney. I'm sure Tony will be at the conference. Well, in the spirit of disagreeing, I agree. I would ask Michael: is mediation actually outcome driven, or is it process driven? Also, is it wise to describe each other because there is a risk that we might literally describe each other, i.e., write to other person, write the other person out the story and blame them? Or is it better to describe the situation, the problem, the reality you perceive, so we can see that there isn't just one view of reality or needs or issues, etc.? And can we agree how to make the ecology safe to explore these differences safely? That's a hell of a question there, Tony. Thanks very much. I'm going to throw that to Michael, and we'll have to we'll end with a sentence from each of the speakers after I've heard from Michael. So, Michael,
Yeah, I'll finish answering that question on the day after the MII conference, I think. It's a rich and wonderful question, or series of questions, really. But let me respond at least to the first part, and that is absolutely, mediation is a process driven, and it is only the only reason I point out the outcome is to make a distinction between what our work involves, and that is that people come hoping for an outcome, and the dialogue that is being organized by Eve Pearlman and Spaceship Media, where they're not looking for a particular kind of outcome. There is an outcome, of course, which is a sense of understanding, acknowledgement, acceptance. And so I probably overstated the notion about outcome driven solely to make the distinction. And created some confusion in the process. So I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. Hey, it's all about dialogue. It's all about dialogue, and you can't predict how people are going to pick you up. But I think Tony was just on the wind up there. That's I think what he'd like to do there.
Oh, it was a great question, a great series of questions.
Lots of good questions.
I wish we could keep going.
And indeed, I'm going to pass it on. But we have talked about how we latch on at the beginning, how we latch on oh, look, there's an agreement part. Let's latch on to that. And I think certainly that would be where we could all get caught up on it becoming a lot more outcome driven unless we remember, hey, it's we're just helping the parties resolve their own
Can I
problems.
just say something?
Oh, here he comes, Tony. There you go.
Yeah.
He's
Because
got a voice, great.
I take it as my role to be provocative, as the mediator, to provoke. But that's both got a negative and a positive connotation. The thing I also go back and thank you very much, Michael. That was an opportunity. That it wasn't a challenge. It was an opportunity to explore the question.
Exactly, it was.
To challenge, not personal. But this is where I do take an issue with the TED talk, where it says, talking about in the title about how do we lead conversations. That's an interesting thing to explore too. What are we actually doing when we're doing what we're doing? Are we leading, or are we part of the process too of exploration and discovery? And titles can be easily like facilitating, leading. What are we actually doing?
Okay, look, thank you very much, Tony. We're not going to have a
Okay.
chance
Yeah.
to resolve
Thanks,
that
Michael.
today
Thank
because
you.
the time is finally up. But doubtless we can continue that at the conference. A last word from Alona, just a quick sentence. Anything you want to say about today, or summing up the video, or anything?
Yeah, I will say what I wanted to say at the very start, that there's something positive, or there's a lot of positive things, but something which really resonated with me was curiosity. So she was referring to curiosity, and I think it's human nature. We are all curious, and I think that's a really good thing we can all work with as mediators, and that's probably also a reason why we are mediators, because we are curious. So it's positive. Very good. There you have your hope.
Thank you very much. That's given me hope to go to Janie. Janie, last word.
Yeah, just the last word is that I was just fascinated with how much overlap her attempting to create dialogue journalism was the similarities with mediation. And I'm wondering if there are opportunities in future for there to be collaboration between these two realms.
Oh, very good. Loving this, loving this. And finally, Andre, do you want to come in? Don't do the whole program again. Just tell us a last word from you. She's
You're
gone.
muted.
There we are. I'm laughing at Scott saying that to me because we're both sitting on the conference committee and he's just sick of listening to it. I suppose the last word is I'm really grateful that we have this space because this is a dialogue space. So I think the hope is in that, so not just watching the video, but actually that, Scott, you have created this space for dialogue.
Well, thank you. Hope everywhere. That's lovely. Well, look, I hope to see most of you at the conference on the 3rd and 4th of October at the Crown Plaza, Dublin Airport. And we'll be back next month, but we'll be following up from the conference and seeing what we're going to be doing next. So we haven't actually picked a video, but we'll get together and do one. So thank you very much. I see, oh, sorry, Jean, you're looking to come in. We're going to stop the recording now.